Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to America once again. We're going to go out towards the west coast to the state of California, the home of craft beer, and we're going to revisit a brewery who you've seen me review a couple of things from already, but they are one of the best known American craft beer brands, I guess you could say, at least over here in Europe, but they are one of the highest by volume producers of craft beer over in America. So for this review then, we are going to go to Petaluma, which is of course home to Lagunitas Brewing Company, and we're having a look at my first beer from their Woodshop series, which is their barrel aging program. This is the 2019 edition of the Willetized, a coffee stout aged in rye oak barrels, coming in at 12.4%. The 2018 edition was originally released just as a kind of one-off apparently. It was 12.8%, maybe 12.9, I can't quite remember, but it proved to be really well received, and they decided that they were going to do it again actually, which is pretty cool. And this is a beer that caught my eye for a couple of reasons. So number one was that it's the coffee stout, and as I've told you before, this is a style that I've been getting really into recently. You know, coffee beans can add such a level of complexity to beers, which is, you know, it's crazy. I don't think there's any other adjunct that can give you such a level of such a high level of complexity in your beer. And it's also aged in rye oak barrels as well. Now, I've never tried an American rye bourbon, and I think even back home in Scotland we don't really have rye whiskey. I think there's maybe like one or two that I've seen around, come to think of it, but I've never actually tried one of them. I've not tried very many American bourbons actually, so I'm really curious to see what that kind of barrel aging is going to do to this beer. But this is also the first Imperial Stout, or Stout dark beer, that I've had from Lagunitas at all actually. I've had the Maximus, the Brown Sugar, and I've also had the Waldo's Special Ale, but this is the darkest beer that I've had from them so far. And as I always say, when you try a beer from a brewery, you want to have something from the dark end and from the light end of the spectrum, and that will give you a good measure of what a brewery is all about. But yeah, this one should be really interesting, I think. I'm very curious to see how it turns out. This particular beer appeared in the Tillfällig sortiment in Systembolaget here in Sweden on the 24th of January 2020, and the price of this was really good when you consider what kind of beer it was. It was 50 Swedish crowns, which translates to about £4 British. It will be about €4.50, maybe somewhere between $5 and $5.50 American. So yeah, pretty damn good price for this beer actually. I think that's probably not far off what you would actually pay for a bottle of it over in the States, and especially when you consider that there's an importer's fee and things to be done with this. So yeah, really curious to see how this one turns out, and really damn good value for what kind of beer it is. The name of course comes from the Willet distillery in Kentucky, one of the very famous state for American bourbon, who were the ones that supplied the barrels for this beer. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's brewery website, links to my other reviews I've done from Lagunitas, all the usual social media is down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for the American beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to pretty damn regularly, I have to say. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Lagunitas then, on to my brewery notes. So Lagunitas, as I mentioned to you earlier, are based in Petaluma in California, over on the American west coast, but they were founded in the very small town of Lagunitas by Tony McGee back in 1993, and that is of course where they take their name from. So he was given a home brewing kit for Christmas one year, and that sent him on his way to becoming a professional brewer, if you like, and that's a very common story when you go out to California. Of course, there's many breweries that started up as a result of that. I believe forgetting which one of the other famous ones it was. It might be Green Flash, where that was also the story. But this brewery grew very quickly in its early years, and they were distributed to 32 different states in America by 2011. And in 2012, they announced plans for a second brewery in Chicago, and this would take the brewery's total brewing capacity up to 600,000 American barrels of beer per year. This brewery began production in April of 2014, and an on-site tap room was added soon after that, and at this point they were the fifth best-selling, or how would you say, the fifth largest craft brewery in America, actually. But in September of 2015, Heineken International purchased a 50% stake in the brewery, and this meant that it would increase the brewery's international operations, but this proved to be very, very controversial amongst fans, because McGee had previously stated that he would not be selling the company, and he'd been quite kind of forthright in that. But in 2017, a few years later, Heineken took over full ownership of the brewery, and Mike McGee remained as the CEO, and today they're producing over 900,000 US barrels of beer annually, which is 1 million hectolitres of beer per year. I think it's actually maybe close to 1.1 million hectolitres of beer per year, so a pretty impressive production scale, actually. And according to Untappd, these guys have produced around 650 different types of beers, and the current brewmaster is Jeremy Marshall, who's been with them for quite a period of time, I think. And from what I gather, Heineken has basically left Lagunitas alone to get on with it. It's mainly the infrastructure of the brewery and things that Lagunitas have been investing in. So yeah, interesting. But yeah, like I say, an interesting brewery, probably one of the best known American craft beer brands, at least to us over here in Europe. So yeah, it's always interesting to try things that are a little bit different from these guys. And as I mentioned, this is my first stout beer. It's the first thing I've had from the dark end of the spectrum from these guys, really. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. If you want to learn more about Lagunitas, of course, you can check out the brewery website in the description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and you can check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages to see information on all the different beers that they have. But their website itself is actually pretty good for that as well. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this then. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is a little bit different from what you might normally expect from Lagunitas. This one is really quite interesting. You can see on the bottle cap there's the dog. It does tell you on the website what the story of the dog is, so maybe I'll add that into my next video. But I thought when this one's a barrel aged beer, it's going to be a little bit of a longer tasting because there's a lot more going on. But it says on the side here, life is uncertain, don't sip. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good lesson then. From our friend, the Kentucky distiller J.D. Willett himself, we have one type of barrel, wood, and we put two things in them, and once they're sufficiently spent, we score some of the scrutable casks from J.D. and put one thing in them, beer. The taste tells. It's good to have friends. Let us know what you think. So yeah, interesting. So without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. And I'm really curious to see how this one turns out. Like I said, the rye whiskey barrels that we use on this one come from the Willett distillery in Kentucky, over in America. I've been to Kentucky very briefly actually, but I've not. I can't remember what the name of the town was. It Poplar's Bluff we went to? Sure, it was right in the bottom corner of Kentucky, if I remember correctly. Or was that Missouri? Maybe Poplar's Bluff. I think it was Bowling Green, Kentucky. That was it, Bowling Green, Kentucky. We kind of went into Kentucky and went in there, which was quite... Well, Dad just wanted to say he'd been to Kentucky, I think, so we drove in and had a little look. But yeah, as you can see with this one then, and as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, it's poured a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. If I shine the light through that, it's actually a bit clearer than I was expecting. You do get a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to it as you put the light through it. And you can see the head on this one is fading away to be a very thin foamy layer, but I would say it's a kind of medium beige tan that you're getting out of this one. But there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there, but you know, overall it looks pretty nice, I have to say. I like how this whole thing I really like how it goes together. It's pretty much what you would expect from an Imperial Stout, but I'll tell you something, some of these aromas you're getting off this beer as you open it up is, you know, it's pretty special, I have to say. So yeah, nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. I actually am surprised at how well the head seems to be retaining on this one, because normally when it's a big 10+% beer, the head is just going to fade away, and it is fading away in the middle right enough, but it's retaining quite well around the edge of the glass. But yeah, nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. So let's have a look at the aroma and see how we get on then. Oh, that's absolutely ridiculous, this beer. You can smell the barrel aging straight away. I mean, the oaky notes that come out of this, are really, really nice. It does smell a little bit more when it's, you know, I've always found that American bourbon, I've tried a few of them, I've not tried all that many of them, but I've always found that American bourbon is very kind of sweet. And when it comes to bourbon barrel aging, you can taste that sweetness mixed in with the wood, but the wood that comes out of this, it comes across as a little bit more kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, not rustic, but it's a little bit more almost kind of leathery and almost spicy, but you can really smell that woody note in there. It actually in some ways reminds me a little bit of with Japanese sake, they often age it in cedar barrels, and it has almost some of the characteristics you get from that. That's one of the really interesting things about barrel aging and adding wood chips and stuff into your beer, because different woods are going to give you different flavours in the beer, of course. So I mean, it really is an interesting note. That it's a very kind of leathery sort of spicy type woody note that you get with this. At the same time, you do get a little bit of the kind of vanilla that you might expect. So you get towards the front of the nose, you can really smell the vanilla. But the coffee, to me, the coffee is really nice. It comes across as being a little bit more aromatic and grassy, but at the same time, it's got a very smooth roast to it. It's not the most roasty, toasty of coffees that you're going to come across in my mind. Yeah, the aroma of this is beautiful. It's very, very infused. So we've only really talked about the wood and the kind of coffee notes out of this. As I've told you before, coffee, it's all about the height above sea level that it's grown, the metres above sea level. And when you start going above a certain height, that's when you start to get the fruity and aromatic notes and everything out of the coffee beans. But to me, this one strikes me as being a little bit grassy and a little bit aromatic, but just it's got a nice kind of soft, roasty quality to it. Very slightly earthy, but very smooth actually. So that's quite interesting with this one. This is one of these beers where the aroma is very subtle, so definitely make sure you take a bit of time and just enjoy the aroma before you actually taste the beer. That's half the experience when it comes to craft beer, honestly. So yeah, there's definitely some nice brown sugars in here. You can pick up, there's a little bit of a kind of sweet caramelly note to this, but there's also some of the more kind of toasty, it's not quite sugar caney, but a little bit like a kind of caramelly wafer type thing, a little bit of a kind of biscuity note as well. On the chocolatey side of things, you can pick up some of the higher level cocos, which is, you know, it's maybe around a kind of 70%-ish cocoa chocolate that you're getting out of this beer. There's not much of the way of hoppiness other than a bit of earthiness in this one. You know, when this is barrel aged, most of the hoppy qualities are going to kind of, the hoppy characteristics I should say, most of those are kind of going to drop away apart from the fruity notes. The fruity notes probably will remain there for quite a little bit, and on that fruity side of things, it's got a nice kind of, it's got a little bit of a kind of raisiny sharpness to it, but at the same time it kind of juices up really nicely to be more blackcurranty and blackberry, maybe a little bit figgy as well. So I'd be curious to know what hops they've used in this one. Could it be Northern Brewer from Germany, or maybe Willetized, which is quite a classic American one to use in stouts and things. And of course you've got Bramley's Cross from England, but I always find Bramley's Cross is a little bit more kind of phenolic almost than this. But I mean, really it's the barrel aging, it's the woody notes, the kind of slightly spicy, more almost muffled isn't the right word, I can't think of the word that I want to describe it with. It's got a really more kind of you know, rustic, haggard type. Haggard isn't the right word either, my English isn't working today. It's got a really nice kind of more rusticy, kind of spicy note from the barrel aging. That's what really makes this beer very unique for me, and I like how I really like how the coffee notes come in on top of that. The coffee itself is, like I say, it comes across to me as being very, very smooth. There's a little touch of earthiness to it, and you've got some nice floral and grassy notes in there as well. It's not the most pungent of coffees to me. It comes across as being a little bit more kind of subtle and things. So definitely take a bit of time and just enjoy that one. The coffee from this one, incidentally, I forgot to say that Apparently it's from Metropolis Coffee in Chicago, so I'm not sure if this beer was produced at the Chicago brewery rather than the Californian one. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. This one is the Willetized, a 12.4% Imperial Stout with coffee beans added from the Metropolis Coffee Roastery in Chicago, and it's also barrel aged in Willet rye whiskey barrels from Kentucky. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål. That's a beautiful, beautiful beer. It's definitely one of the more kind of subtle and complex ones that I've come across in recent times. You know, for me, I've been saying in a few videos recently, I've always wondered, barrel aging for me, in some beers it can be a hit and a miss, but I think maybe it's more of a kind of curiosity thing for me. I'd be very curious to see what this beer was like before the before and after the aging, because it would be quite a, you know, a kind of learning experience for me, I guess you could say. It's quite I would be curious just to see that, because it always helps you learn a little bit more when you've got rye whiskey barrels. But what I will say is it's beautiful, and that's the main message to take away. This is an awesome, awesome beer. So let's just try and break down the flavour of this one a little bit then. So straight away with this one, what you're going to notice about this beer is that the woodiness just blankets the middle of your tongue, and it's very, very smooth. The woody qualities, that smooth oaky note, that is really the backbone of this beer. The further you go into the aftertaste, you can almost feel it kind of sweetening up a little bit, and you get some of those brown sugary notes out of it. Like I said to you, I've always found American bourbon to be a bit more sweet than Scotch whisky generally. I think pretty much when the Americans get their hands on anything, it tends to get a little bit sweeter. You know, just look at some of these Imperial Stouts and IPAs and things that they've had these days, and compare them to the stuff that the English used to produce. You know, it's good, but you know, nothing wrong with that. I do enjoy it. But it's the woody notes in this are really very nice. You can feel, the further you go into the aftertaste, you get that kind of, it's almost like a little bit drier in its woody qualities, and it's just that little touch more kind of spicy. You can feel that the kind of rye grains, because I've always loved German rye bread, you can really feel that the woody flavours have just a bit of that kind of almost rye bready type quality infused into them, and it's really nice. And the brown sugars for me just kind of sit on top of that, and the coffee's adding like really interesting things to it as well. But for me, the whole base bone of this beer is the wood, the rye notes kind of infused into that, and a little bit of the kind of brown sugar. I think the brown sugars come out a little bit more further forward on the palate, and you start to get the coffee kind of on the edge of the palate, but also a bit more towards the back in my mind. But yeah, that's really, it's a special beer, this one. I mean, if you get the chance to try this, definitely have a go at it. I think out of all the beers that I've had from Lagunitas, and you know, there was nothing wrong with any of the other ones at all, you know, this one really is, I think this is by quite a way the best one that I've had from them. In terms of the coffee then, you notice the coffee a little bit more in the aftertaste, I think, and like I say, it comes out towards the back of the palate. It's got a nice roasty, toasty earthiness to it, but then as you move a bit further forward on the palate, from the back of your tongue, I think you start to pick out some of the kind of floral notes to it. It's maybe got a little edge of kind of citrusiness to it, and I mean, as I say, the further you go into the aftertaste, you can feel the coffee notes a little bit more towards the front of the palate as well. There is just a little bit of a kind of citrusy, grassy kind of thing coming off the coffees too. So yeah, that's really very nice. It's awesomeness. I mean, as I said, you can get, it depends on where your coffee's from, what height it's grown at, of course, because then you start to get all these complexities out of it, and you've also, you know, it's I think it's how they kind of treat it in the different soils and things like that as well. This coffee for me is very, very smooth, and that suits the woody notes in the beer as well actually, but it's also got that bit of earthiness which kind of matches up with the slightly spicier notes you're getting from the wood. But this beer, I say spicy, but it comes across as very smooth. It's just the spice is kind of infused into that smoothness, if that makes sense. But the coffee really sits at the back of your palate, and the further you go into the aftertaste, you get some of the earthy notes from the hops sitting there, but you also get the kind of roastier notes, and that earthiness from the coffee as well. But yeah, as you push further forward, you can definitely pick out some vanilla notes behind the fruity part of your palate. That kind of sits there as well. It's almost a little touch leathery, this beer too, in my mind. There's a wee bit, if you go to the centre of your palate, you get a little bit more brown sugar out of this one, and it's quite a toasty brown sugar in my mind. It does get a little bit more oily. It's a bit more oily when you take the beer in, and a bit sweeter in my mind. Yeah, you get more of the brown sugar in the very centre of your palate as well. It's very sweet in the beginning, then it just fades away a little bit, and you start to get more of the you really start to get more of the sweet kind of chocolatey notes on the edge of that. So as I say, in the very centre of your palate you get the brown sugar, very sweet, becomes a bit more biscuity, and then almost on the edge of that you get the kind of chocolatey notes. And for me, the chocolate that you're getting out of this is a little bit, it's kind of like a 60-70%-ish cocoa chocolate. It's got a nice little bit of darkness to it, but at the same time it retains a little bit of that sweetness. So I mean, all the complexity that you get in this beer, for me, it's in these layers. There is a little nutty touch to this one as well, but that's very, very minimal. So yeah, bottom of the beer, or baseline of the beer if you like, is the kind of woody qualities. You can feel the kind of rye, grainy notes infused into that. If you move a bit further forward, you start to get some of the kind of light caramelly wafer notes. Towards the back you've got more of the coffee. On top of those, in the centre of the palate, you get the thicker brown sugars, the caramel, a little bit more of the biscuity kind of thing, and then on the outside of that you start to get more of the kind of chocolate. I think that's a good way to sort of sum it up actually. I mean, it's very, I wouldn't say this is the most complex Imperial Stout that I've come across. It's fairly complex, but it's all about how these flavours fit together, and the coffee for me in this is really nice. The coffee notes, like I said, smooth, roasty, little touch earthy, but you've also got elements of kind of floral notes, and a very slight citrusiness to it as well. You can feel that on the back of your palate. So yeah, let's look at the hoppy side of things then. So yeah, back corners of your palate, definitely a little bit of earthiness there. Quite a nice dark earthiness. But as you come further forward, that smoothens out a little bit. You get a wee teeny little remnant of kind of floral aromaticity on the front corners of your palate. And then as you go round the front curve of the tongue, there is actually in this one a little bit of grassiness still noticeable there. I don't know if it says when it was bottled, right enough. Oh, this one was brought in by Galatea, who they do the Tuna beers, if I remember correctly. And oh no, it's St Eric Brewery, but it doesn't say when this beer was bottled at all, or I'm not sure if that's a bottling date up there, but it's a bit difficult to decipher, to be honest. It looks more like a serial number. But yeah, there is a little bit of grassiness still in this one, so I suspect that it might have been in the bottle, you know, maybe about 6 months, you know, maybe 9 months at most, I would think. But yeah, that you still pick up a little bit of that there. Behind the front curve of the palate, of course, that's where you get the little oily bubble where those juicy, fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer, and this one has quite a little bit going on in that regard as well. So yeah, with this one for me, when you take it in, it's got a little bit of kind of sharpness to it, a little bit of kind of plummy sharpness, but then it really it really mellows out a little bit. You start to get more of the kind of figgy notes there, but you can really feel that sort of slightly spicy woody note. That really even pushes further forward onto the fruity notes as well. You can really feel that woody note. It blankets the whole of your tongue, not just further back, and you can feel that underneath the fruity notes as well. So for me, it's it starts off a little bit plummy and raisiny, you start to get more kind of blackcurranty and blackberry notes out of it, and it's a little bit more figgy the further you go into the aftertaste as well. I can feel the booze with this one going to my head actually. This is a nice beer to have on a Sunday afternoon when you're just kind of chilling and watching films, to be honest, which is exactly what I'm doing. This one, the fruitiness in this is really nice. I like how it comes in quite sweet, and then it just rolls out, becomes a little bit more oily, and then you start to get the woody dryness coming out of this beer later on actually. But I mean, overall, this is just a beautiful, beautiful beer for me. I can notice the difference with the rye barrel aging. It's just a little bit kind of drier and more almost rusticy, if you like. But it's also got some, it also has a little bit of that, how do you say, it's also just got a little bit of that, the sweetness and everything else that you expect of it. The coffee really adds a little bit of complexity to it as well. So, you know, coffee stouts, like I say, when it comes to that style, recommendations in the comment section below please. I really want to explore coffee stouts as much as I can, but this one's beautiful, and you know, thumbs up to Lagunitas for this. They've done an awesome job with it. Maybe need to have a go at some Willet rye whiskey now actually. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, it's, you know, this is it's definitely a full-bodied beer. As I've always said to you, I find that barrel aging takes the mouthfeel down a little bit compared to, you know, a regular Imperial Stout, so it is quite a full-bodied beer. Carbonation is very, very smooth, as you would expect. Overall, I'd say this mouthfeel, it's got a little bit of an oily character to it, but mainly it strikes me as being nice and smooth. If we're talking about bitterness, hard to place. I mean, this beer, it must be at least, it must be about 80 IBUs. It must be somewhere in that region. I mean, in some ways it's very, very smooth, but I could see you'll be getting a bit of bitterness from the coffee. You'll also be getting a bit of bitterness from the hops and things that were in there, and I think you would maybe get a little touch from the barrel aging with this one as well, because of the rye grains and things. So I would think I would go with maybe around 70-ish IBUs in this one. I think that's a safe bet. The middle of your palate, it's got a lovely blend between the kind of sweetness and the more smooth woody flavours, like I was saying. You've got the chocolate in there as well, which does give you a degree of sweetness. And you've also got the fruity notes, and for me the fruitiness is, would we say it's oily? Yeah, it's quite an oily fruitiness. It starts in a little bit sharp and it just smooths out and becomes a little bit more kind of figgy later on. It's got some nice, as I say, plums in the beginning, some blackberries and blackcurrants, and then a little bit of a kind of figgy, juicy note in there as well. But overall, beautiful tasting beer, this one, and I'm really glad that I got to try this. Quite a unique one, and definitely cool to try something from the dark end of the spectrum from Lagunitas as well. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was a really interesting beer to try, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed my take on it as well. So yeah, this one was the Willetized, the 2019 edition of the Willetized from Lagunitas Brewing Company in Petaluma, California in America, but also brewing in Chicago. So yeah, a beautiful coffee Imperial Stout aged in rye whiskey barrels. I need to see if there's more rye whiskey barrel aged beers over in America. I'm sure there are, but something I do need to explore a little bit further. So another first for you here on the channel, and that's pretty cool after 2,000 odd beer reviews. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Lagunitas Brewing Company as well. This was a really interesting beer to try, and I'm sure I'll return to Lagunitas at some point fairly soon, because they do seem to release things fairly regularly through the small partiers in Systembolaget. So yeah, make sure you check out this one. If you enjoy coffee stouts, you'll really enjoy this one, and do give me some more coffee stout and rye whiskey barrel aged beer recommendations too. Thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. Until the next time, slàinte just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slàinte, skål, cheers.